Billerica Public Libraries, Book Buzz, April Publications. Our first genre is contemporary fiction. Housebreaking by Colleen Hubbard. Home is certainly not where Delle's heart is. After a local scandal led to her parents' divorce and the rest of her family turned their backs on her, Delle left her small town and cut off contact. Now, with both her parents gone, a chance has arrived for Delle to retaliate. Her uncle wants the one thing Delle inherited, the family home. Instead of handing the place over with no other resources at her disposal, Delle decides she will tear the place apart herself piece by piece. But Delle will soon discover the task stirs up more than just old memories as relatives, each in their own state of unraveling, come knocking on her door. This spare, strange, magical book is a story not only about the powerlessness and hurt that run through a family, but also about the moments when brokenness can offer us the rare chance to start again. Activities of Daily Living by Lisa Chen. How do we take stock of a life? By what means and by what measure? This is the question that preoccupies Alice, an immigrant from Taiwan, in her late 30s. In the off hours from her day job, Alice struggles to create a project about the downtown performance artist Tejing Hesh and his year-long 1980s performance pieces. Meanwhile, she becomes the caretaker for an aging stepfather, a Vietnam vet whose dream of making traditional Chinese furniture dissolved in alcoholism and dementia. As Alice roots deeper into Hush's radical use of time, in one piece, the artist confined himself to a cell for a year. In the next, he punched a time clock every hour on the hour for a year, and in his mysterious disappearance from the art world. Her project starts metabolizing events from her own life. She wanders from subway rides to street protests, loses touch with a friend, and tenderly observes her father's slow decline. Moving between present day and the 1980s New York City with detours to Silicon Valley and the Venice. This vivid novel will keep you turning the pages. Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. Chemist Elizabeth Zott is not your average woman. In fact, Elizabeth would be the first to point out that there's no such thing as an average woman. But it's the early 1960s, and her all-male team at Hastings Research Institute takes a very unscientific view of equality. Except for one, Kelvin, the lonely, brilliant, Nobel Prize-nominated grudge holder who falls in love with all things her mind. True chemistry results. But like science, life is unpredictable, which is why a few years later, Elizabeth finds herself not only a single mother, but the reluctant star of America's most beloved cooking show, Supper at Six. Elizabeth's unusual approach to cooking proves revolutionary, but as her following grows, not everyone is happy, because as it turns out, Elizabeth isn't just teaching women to cook. She's daring them to change the status quo. Marrying the Ketchups by Jennifer Close. Here is something the Sullivan family knows to be true. Their grandfather, Bud, founder of J.P. Sullivan's, will always make the best burgers in Oak Park, Illinois. But when, over the course of 3 strange months, Bud drops dead, suddenly everyone in the family finds themselves doubting all they hold dear. Take Gretchen, for example, lead singer for the 90s cover band who's been flirting with fame for a decade, but is beginning to wonder if she's too old to be chasing childish dreams. Or Jane, Gretchen's older sister, who is starting to suspect that her fitness-obsessed husband, who hides the screen of his phone, isn't always working late. And then there's Teddy, their steadfast, unfailingly good cousin, nursing heartbreak and confusion because the guy who dumped him keeps showing up at lunch at J.P. Sullivan's, where Teddy is the manager. How can any of them be expected to make the right decisions when the world feels sideways? Our second genre is historical fiction. Last Dance on Starlight Pier by Sarah Bird. Shivering and in shock, Evie Grace Devlin watches the Starlight Palace burn into the sea and wonders how she became a person who would cause a man to kill himself. She'd come to Galveston to escape a dark past in vaudeville and become a good person, a nurse. When the dream is cruelly thwarted, Evie is swept into an alien world of dance marathons. All that she has been denied, a family, a purpose, even love, waits for her there in the place she dreads most, the spotlight. The Mayfair Bookshop by Eliza Knight, 1938. She was one of the six sparkling Mitford sisters known for her stinging quips, stylish dress, and bright green eyes. But Nancy, seemingly dazzling life, was really one of turmoil. With an unfaithful and broke husband, two Nazi sympathizer sisters, and her hopes of motherhood dashed forever, with the war imminent, Nancy finds respite by taking a job at Haywood Hill Bookshop in Mayfair, hoping to make ends meet, and discovers a new life. Present day. When book curator Lucy St. Clair lands a gig working at Haywood Hill, she can't get on the plane fast enough. Not only can she start the healing process from the loss of her mother, it's a dream come true to set foot in the legendary store. Doubly exciting, she brings with her a first edition of Nancy's work, one with somewhat of a mysterious inscription from the author. Soon she discovers her life and Nancy's are intertwined. And it all comes back to a little London bookshop, a place that changes the lives of two women from different eras in the most surprising ways. The School for German Brides by Amy Runyon, Germany, 1939. As the war begins, Hannah, a young German woman, is sent to live with her aunt and uncle after her mother's death. Thrown into a life of luxury she never expected, Hannah soon finds herself unwillingly matched with an SS officer. The independence that her mother lovingly fostered in her is considered highly inappropriate as the future wife of an up and coming officer, and she is sent to bride school. There, in a posh village on the outskirts of town, Hannah is taught how to be a proper German wife. The lessons of hatred and prejudice disturb her, and she finds herself desperate to escape. For Tilde Altman, a German Jewish woman, the war has brought more devastation than she ever thought possible. Torn from her work, her family, and her new husband, she fights to keep her unborn baby safe. But when the unthinkable happens, Tilde realizes she must hide. The risk of discovery grows greater with each passing day, but she has no other options. When Hannah discovers that Tilde is hiding near the school, she knows she must help her however she can. For Tilde, fear wars with desperation. The woman must take extraordinary risks to save the lives of her mother and baby. Will they both be able to escape with their lives? And if they do, what kind of future can they possibly hope for? Our third genre is cultural fiction. High Spirits by Camille Gomera Tavaz. High Spirits is a collection of 11 interconnected short stories from the Dominican Desperia. It is a book centered on one extended family, the Bellions, across multiple generations. It is set in the fictional small town of Jalapa and Santo Domingo in Patterson and San Juan in Washington Heights, too. It is told in a style both utterly real and distinctly magical, and its stories explore machoism, mental health, family, and identity. Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee. History is told by the conquerors across the Western world. Museums display the spoils of war, of conquest, of colonialism. Priceless pieces are looted from other countries, kept even now. Will Chen plans to steal them back. A senior at Harvard, perfect student, an art history major, and sometimes artist, and the eldest son who's always been his parents' American dream. But when a mysterious Chinese benefactor reaches out with an impossible and an illegal job offer, Will finds himself something else as well, the leader of a heist to steal back five priceless Chinese sculptures looted from Beijing centuries ago. His crew is every heist archetype one can imagine, or at least the closest he can get. A con artist, Irene Chen. A thief, Daniel Lane. A getaway driver, Lily Wu, a hacker, Alex Hung. Each member of his crew has their own complicated relationship with China and the identity they cultivated as Chinese Americans. But when Will asks, none of them can turn him down, because if they succeed, they earn $50 million dollars and a chance to make history. But if they fail, it will mean not just the loss of everything they dreamed for themselves, but yet another thwarted attempt to take back what colonism has stolen. Lucky Turtle by Bill Rohrbach. When 16-year-old Sindra is sent to reform camp in Montana after being involved in an armed robbery, she is thrust into the world of mountains and cowboys and prayers and people from all walks of life like she's never seen in suburban Massachusetts. At Camp Challenge, she becomes transfixed by Lucky, a camp employee of mysterious origin, an origin of constant speculation, and the chemistry between them is instant and profound. The pair escape together into the wilderness to create an idyllic life far from the reach of law, living off their resounding love. Lucky's vast knowledge of wilderness and a little help from some of friends. But they can run from the outside world for only so long, and consequences of their naive fantasy of future together and circumstances shaped by skin color will keep them apart for decades. Cinder gets trapped into a relationship where she is controlled by a man who claims to be a rescuer. But for Cinder, there'll never be another Lucky, and she dreams of one day finding him, the only man she ever fully trusted, her soulmate. Our fourth genre is romance. Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. After a wild bet, gourmet grilled cheese sandwich, and cuddle with the baby goat, Alexis Montgomery has had her world turned upside down. The cause, Daniel Grant, a ridiculously hot carpenter who's 10 years younger than her and as casual as they come. The complete opposite of sophisticated city girl Alexis, and yet their chemistry is undeniable. When her ultra wealthy parents want her to carry on the family legacy of world renowned surgeon, Alexis doesn't need glory or fame. She's fine with being a mere ER doctor, and every minute she spends with Daniel in the tight knit town where he lives, she's discovering just what's really important. Yet, letting their relationship become anything more than a short term fling would mean turning her back on her family and giving up the opportunity to help thousands of people. Bringing Daniel into her world is impossible, and yet she can't just give up the joy she's found with him either. With so many differences between them, how can Alexis possibly choose between her world and his? The No Show by Beth O'Leary. Siobhan is quick tempered life coach with way too much on her plate. Miranda is a tree surgeon used to being treated as just one of the guys on the job. Jane is a soft spoken volunteer for the local charity shop with zero sense of self worth. These three women are strangers who have only one thing in common. They have all been stood up on the same day, the very worst day to be stood up, Valentine's Day. And unbeknownst to them, they've all been stood up by the very same man. Once they've each forgiven him for standing them up, they all are in serious danger of falling in love with a man who may not just be one or two, but three women on the go. Is there more to him that meets the eye? Where was he on Valentine's Day? And will they each untangle the truth before they get all of their hearts broken? To Marry and to Meddle by Martha Waters. Lady Emily Turner has been a debutante for 6 seasons now and should have long settled into a suitable marriage. However, due to her father's large debts, her only suitor is the persistent and odious owner of her father's favorite gambling house. Meanwhile, Lord Julian Belfry, the second son of a Marcus, has scandalized society as an actor and owner of a theater, the kind of establishment where men take their mistresses, not their wives. When their lives intersect at a house party, Lord Julian hatches a plan to benefit them both. With a marriage of convenience, Emily will use her society connections to promote the theater to a more respectable clientele, and Julian will take her out from under the shadows of her father's unsavory associates. But they soon realize they have very different plans for their marriage. Julian wants Emily to remain a society wife, while Emily discovers an interest in the theater. But when a fleeing actress, murderous kitten, and meddlesome friends enter the fray, Emily and Julian will have to confront the fact that their marriage of convenience comes with rather inconvenient feelings. Our fifth genre is fantasy. God of Neverland by Gamma Ray Martinez. Peter Pan is missing. Neverland is in trouble. For adults, that might not matter all that much, but for children whose dreams and imagination draw strength from the wild god's power, the magic we take for granted in the real world is in danger of being lost forever. Such is the life of now grown up Michael Darling. Michael returned from Neverland with the dream of continuing his adventuring ways by joining the Knights of the Round, an organization built to keep humanity safe from magical and mythical threats. But after a mission gone terribly wrong, he vowed to leave the Knights behind and finally live as a civilian, finding order and simplicity as a train engineer, a far cry from the chaos of his youth. He hasn't worked with the Knights in years, so what could they need for him now? Peter Pan has gone missing, and Neverland is now on the edge of oblivion. Michael realizes he has no choice and agrees to one last mission. Alongside the young knight Vanessa and some old friends, Michael embarks on the ultimate adventure, a journey to a fantasy world to save a god. Determined to stop evil, fight for Neverland, and find Peter Pan, will Michael be able to save the magical and physical world, or will his biggest fear come true? The clock is ticking, and in Neverland, that's never a good sign. In a Garden Burning Gold by Rory Power. Rhea and Lexus were born into a family unlike any other. Together with their siblings, they control the seasons, the tides, and the stars, and help their father rule their kingdom. Thanks to their magic, the family has ruled for an eternity and plan to rule for eternity more. But Rio and Lexus are special. They are twins, bonded down to the bone, and for the past 100 years, that bond has protected them as their father becomes an unpredictable tyrant, and his worsening temper threatens the family's grip on power. Now, with rival nations ready to attack and a rebel movement within their own borders, Rhea and Lexus must fight to keep the kingdom and the family together, even as treachery, deceit, and drama threaten to strand the twins on opposite sides of the battlefield. Our sixth genre is science fiction. Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. Edwin St. Andrew is 18 years old when he crosses the Atlantic by steamship, exiled from polite society following an ill-conceived comment at a dinner party. He enters the forest spellbound by the beauty of the Canadian wilderness and suddenly hears notes of a violin echoing in an airship terminal, an experience that shocks him to his core. 2 centuries later, a famous writer named Olive Lewin is on a book tour. She's traveling all over Earth, but her home is the second moon colony. Within the text of Olive's best-selling pandemic novel lies a strange passage. A man plays his violin for change in the echoing corridor of an airship terminal as the trees of a forest rise around him. When Gaspard Jacques Roberts, a detective in the black-skied night city, is hired to investigate an anomaly in the North American wilderness, he uncovers a series of lives upended. The exiled son of an earl driven to madness, a writer trapped far from home as a pandemic ravages Earth, and a childhood friend from the night city who, like Gaspard himself, has glimpsed the chance to do something extraordinary that will disrupt the timeline of the universe. The Candy House by Jennifer Egan opens with the brilliant Bix Boynton, whose company Mandela is so successful that he is one of those tech demigods with whom we're all on first name basis. Bix is 40 with 4 kids, restless and desperate for a new idea, when he stumbles into a conversation group, mostly Columbia professors, one of whom is experimenting with downloading or externalizing memory. It's 2010. Within a decade, Bix's new technology, Own Your Own Unconsciousness, that allows you to access to every memory you've ever had and to share every memory in exchange for access to the memories of others. has seduced multitudes, but not everyone. The Memory Librarian by Janelle Monáe. Whoever controls our memories controls the future. A collection of tales comprising the bold vision of powerful themes that have made Monet such a compelling and celebrated storyteller. One such tale, The Dirty Computer, introduced a world in which thoughts, as a mean of self-conception, could be controlled or erased by a select few, and whether human, artificial intelligence, or other, your life is dictated by those who convince themselves that they have the right to decide your fate. That was until Jane, 57821, decided to remember and break free. Our seventh genre is mystery and suspense. Lost and Found in Paris by Leanne Dolan. Joan Blakely had an unconventional childhood. The daughter of a globe-trotting supermodel and a world-famous artist, her artist father died on 9/11, and Joan, an art historian by training, has spent more than a decade maintaining his legacy. Life in the art world is beginning to wear on her. And then one fateful afternoon, her husband drops a bombshell. He's fathered twins with another woman. Furious but secretly pleased to have a reason to blow up her life, Joan impulsively decides to get out of town, booking a last-minute trip to Paris as an art courier, the person museums hire to fly valuable works of art to potential clients discreetly stowed in their carry-on luggage. Sipping her champagne in business class, she chats up her seatmate Nate, a good-looking tech nerd who invites her to dinner in Paris. He doesn't know she's carrying drawings worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But after a romantic dinner and even a more romantic night together, Joan wakes up the next to her new lover to discover the drawings gone. Even more shocking, it's what's been left in their place, a sketch from her father's journals, which she thought had been lost when he died on 9/11, in a poem that reads like a treasure hunt. With Nate as a sidekick, Joan will follow the clues all over Paris, from its grand cathedrals to the romantic bistros and the twisty side streets of Montmartre, hoping to recover the lost art in her own sense of adventure. What she finds is even better than she expected. The Secrets We Share by Edwin Hill. At first glance, Natalie Karanoff and Glenn Abbott hardly look like sisters, even off duty. Natalie dresses like a Boston cop, preferring practical clothes and unfussy pinned-up hair. Her younger sister Glenn seems tailor-made for the spotlight, from her signature red mane to a camera-ready smile. Glenn has spent years cultivating her brand through her baking blog and with the publication of her new book. That hard work seems about to pay off, but when her fans have no idea about the nightmare in Natalie's past. 20 years ago, their father's body was discovered in the woods behind their house. A trauma like that doesn't fit with Glenn's public image. Yet, maybe someone reading her blog does know something. There have been anonymous online messages, vague yet ominous, hinting that she's being watched. And with unsettling consequences hitting even closer to home, both Glenn and Natalie soon have more pressing matters to worry about, especially when a dead body is found in an abandoned building. Natalie is starting to wonder how much Glenn really knows about the people closest to her. But are there also secrets Natalie has yet to uncover about those she herself trusts? For 2 decades, she believed their father was murdered by their neighbor with whom he was having an affair. But if those events are connected to what's happening now, maybe there's much more that Natalie doesn't know about their father, about their neighbors, about her friends, and even about herself. Danger on the Atlantic by Erica Ruth Neubauer. Atlantic Ocean, 1926. Voyaging from Southampton to New York, self-reliant Jane is determined to prove herself a worthy investigator on the stately ship, even awkwardly going undercover as a fashionable wife of her magnetic partner, Mr. Rubbers. Few details are known about the rumored German spy the duo had been asked with identifying among fellow passengers. But new troubles unfold once wealthy newlywed Vanessa Fitzsimmons announces the sudden disappearance of her husband at sea. Miles Vandermeter, the man Vanessa rushed to marry in Monte Carlo, has allegedly vanished into thin air along with his luggage. Revers guesses the shifty heiress may be weaving tall tales for fun between flutes of champagne, yet Jane isn't convinced. Not after the stunning murder of the trusted acquaintance sends them into uncharted waters. Facing two dangerous mysteries and a boatload of suspects, Jane must navigate a claustrophobic quest for answers before the culprits can slip from her grasp on land, or worse, ensure she and Revers never reach their destination. The Children on the Hill by Jennifer McMahon, 1978. At her renowned treatment center in Vermont, brilliant psychiatrist Dr. Helen Hildreth is acclaimed for her compassionate work with the mentally ill. But when she's home with her cherished grandchildren, V and Eric, she's just grand, teaching them how to take care of their pets, preparing them home-cooked meals, providing them with care and attention and love. Then one day, Gran brings home a child to stay with the family, Iris. Silent, hollow-eyed, skittish, does not behave like a normal girl. Still, Violet is thrilled to have a new playmate. She and Eric invite Iris to join their monster club, where they catalog all kinds of monsters and dream up ways to defeat them. Before long, Iris begins to come out of her shell. She and V and Eric do everything together, ride their bicycles, go to the drive-in, meet at their clubhouse, and in secret to hunt monsters. Because as V explains, monsters are everywhere. 2019, Lizzie Shelley, the host of the popular podcast Monsters Among Us, is traveling to Vermont, where a young girl has been abducted and a monster sighting has the town in an uproar. She's determined to hunt it down because Lizzie knows better than anyone that monsters are real. And one of them is her very own sister. The Investigator by John Samford. By age 24, Letty Davenport has seen more action and uncovered more secrets than many law enforcement professionals. Now a recent Stanford grad with a master's in economics, she's restless and bored in a desk job by U.S. Senator Coles. Letty's ready to quit, but her skills have impressed Coles and he offers her a carrot. Feet on the ground investigative work in conjunction with the Department of Homeland Security. Several oil companies in Texas have reported thefts of crude. Coles tells her he isn't so much concerned with the oil as he is with the money. Who is selling the oil, and what are they doing with the profits? Rumor has it that a fairly ugly military group led by a woman known only as Lorelei might be involved. Coles wants to know if money is going to them, if so, what they're planning. Letty is partnered with the Department of Homeland Security investigator John Kaiser, and they head to Texas. When the case quickly turns deadly, they know they're on the track of something bigger. Lorelei and her group have set in motion an explosive plan, and the clock is ticking down. An Honest Lie by Taryn Fisher. I'm going to kill her. You better come if you want to save her. Rainey lives on top of Tiger Mountain, remote, moody, cloistered in pine trees and fog. It's a sanctuary, a new life. She can hide from the disturbing past she wants to forget, if she's allowed to. When Rainey reluctantly agrees to a girls' weekend in Vegas, she's prepared for an exhausting parade of shots and slot machines. But after a wild night, her friend Brett doesn't come back to the hotel room. And then Rainey gets a text message sent from Brett's phone. Someone has her, but Rainey is who they really want, and Rainey knows why. What follows is a twisted and shocking journey on the knife edge of life and death. If she wants to save Brett and herself, the only way is to step back into the past. Crimson Summer by Heather Graham. When FDLE Special Agent Amy Lawson discovers a small husk figurine amid the bloody aftermath of a gang massacre in the Everglades, she recognizes it immediately. The toy's calling card of the Eclipse cult that Amy and her partner, FBI Special Agent Hunter Forrest, have been investigating. It can only mean one thing. This wasn't an isolated skirmish. It was the beginning of a war. As tension between rival gangs rises, so does the body count. And Amy and Hunter's investigation leads them to a violent five-right far-right extremist group who are in no hurry to quell the civil unrest. With a deadly puppet master working to silence their every lead, it's a race against the clock to figure out who's been pulling the strings and put a stop to the escalating cartel turf war before the Everglades run red. The Wrong Victim by Allison Brennan. A bomb explodes on a sunset charter cruise out of a Friday harbor at the height of tourist season and kills everyone on board. Forensic profilers know that there are two types of domestic terrorists: those who use violence to instill fear for political purposes but stop at murder because it distracts from the cause, and those who crave attention and are willing to maim and murder for their own agenda. Accused of putting profits before people after leaking fuel that caused massive fish kill, the West End Charter Company may itself have been the target. But as Special Agent Matt Coster, Detective Kara Quinn, and the rest of the FBI team begin their investigation, they discover that plenty of people might have wanted someone dead on the yacht. Now they must track down who is responsible and stop them before they strike again. The last genre is nonfiction. Damn Lucky by Kevin Maurer. Pearl Harbor, Hawaii was a world away from John Luckadoo's hometown of Chattanooga, Tennessee. But when the Japanese attacked the American naval base on December 7, 1941, he didn't hesitate to join the military. Trained as a pilot with the United States Air Force, Second Lieutenant Luckadoo was assigned to the 100th Bomb Group stationed in Thorpe, Abbots, England. Between June and October 1943, he flew B-17 Flying Fortresses over France and Germany on bombing runs devised to destroy the Nazi war machine. With a shrapnel-torn Bible in his flight jacket pocket and his girlfriend's silk stocking around his neck like a scarf talesman, Luckadoo piloted through Luftwaffe machine gun fire, anti-aircraft flak, while enduring sub-zero temperatures to complete 25 missions in his combat service. The average bomber crew rarely survived after 8 to 12 missions. Knowing far too many airmen who wouldn't be returning home, Luckadoo closed off his emotions, focused on his task to finish his tour of duty one moment at a time, realizing his success was more about being lucky than being skilled. The Trayvon Generation by Elizabeth Alexander. In the midst of civil unrest in the summer of 2020 and following the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Elizabeth Alexander, one of the great literary voices of our time, turned a mother's eye to her sons' and students' generation and wrote a celebrated and moving reflection on the challenges facing young Black America. This essay incisively and lovingly observes the experiences, attitudes, and cultural expressions of what she referred to as the Trayvon generation, who even as children could not be shielded from the brutality that has affected the lives of so many Black people. Healing When a Nurse Becomes a Patient by Teresa Brown. Brown tells a powerful and intensely personal story about breast cancer. She brings us along with her from the mammogram that would change her life through her diagnosis, treatment, and recovery. Despite her training and years of experience as an oncology and hospice nurse, she finds herself continually surprised by the lack of compassion in the medical maze. Just as so many of us have, why is she expected to wait over a long weekend to hear the results of her cancer test if they are ready? Where is the empathy from caregivers? Why is she so often left in the dark about procedures and treatments? At times, she's mad at herself for not speaking up and asking for what she needs, but knows that being labeled a difficult patient could mean she gets worse care. Here and Hereafter by Tyler Henry. Do you want to live more meaningful and in turn fulfill your life's potential? Do you want to have the capability to transform your life and make it infinitely better? By paying attention to what those who have lived and died have come to understand about meaning of life itself. As one of the world's most accomplished mediums, Tyler Henry has had thousands of communications with those who have already gone through humanity's final frontier, physical death. Tyler explains that by listening and learning from the departed, Following their guidance and paying attention to what they might have done differently, we can get more fulfillment and purpose from our own lives. 8,000 Ways to Pay Attention by Rebecca Schiller. It should have been Rebecca's dream come true, moving her young family to the English countryside to raise goats and coax their own fruit and vegetables from the land. But Rebecca's health begins to crumble, with bewildering symptoms, frequent falls, uncontrollable rages, and mysterious lapses in memory. As she fights to be seen by a succession of specialists, her fledgling homestead and her family hang by increasingly tenuous threads. And when her diagnosis finally comes, it is utterly unexpected: severe ADHD. In a scramble for answers, Rebecca's consciousness ultimately sears with pinpoint focus and spirals with connections. 12 Notes on Life and Creativity by Quincy Jones. 12 Notes is a self-development guide that will affirm that creativity is a calling that can and should be answered no matter your age or experience. Drawing from his own life and those of his many creative collaborators, past and present, Quincy presents readers with lessons that are hardworking and accessible, yet speak to the passion of self-expression. He includes sections as deep as how to transform grief into power, and as practical as how to set goals and articulate intentions through daily affirmations. Weaving his story throughout, Jones let readers in on his own creative process, as well as the importance of letting honesty, hard work, and good relationships drive your career. Write for Your Life by Anna Quinlan. What really matters in life, what truly lasts in our hearts and our minds. Where can we find community, history, and humanity? In this lyrical new book, answer is clear: through writing. Write for Your Life argues that there has never been a more important time to stop and record what we are thinking and feeling. Using examples from past, present, and future, from Anne Frank to Toni Morrison, from love letters written after World War II to journal reflections from nurses and doctors today. Write for Your Life vividly illuminates the ways in which writing connects us to ourselves and those we cherish. Bomb Shelter by Mary Laura Philpott. A lifelong worrier, Mary always kept an eye out for danger, a habit that only intensified when she became a parent. But she looked on the bright side too, believing that as long as she cared enough, she could keep her loved ones safe. Then, in the dark of one quiet pre-dawn morning, she awoke abruptly to a terrible sound and found her teenage son unconscious on the floor. In the aftermath of crisis that darkened her signature sunny spirit, she wondered, if this happened, what else could happen? And how do any of us keep going when we can't know for sure what's coming next? Easy Beauty by Chloe Cooper Jones. So begins Jones's bold, revealing account of moving through the world in a body that looks different than most. Jones learned early on to factor pain calculations into every plan, every situation. Born with a rare condition called sacral agenus, which affects both her stature and gait, her pain is physical. But there is also a pain of being judged and pitied for her appearance, of being dismissed as less than. The way she has been seen or not seen has informed her lens on the world her entire life. She resisted this reality by excelling academically and retreating to the neutral room in her mind until it passed. But after unexpectedly becoming a mother, something in her shifts, and Joan sets off on a journey across the globe, reclaiming the spaces she'd been denied and denied herself. Deaf Utopia by Niall DeMarco. Before becoming the actor, producer, advocate, and model that people know today, Niall was half of a pair of deaf twins born to a multi-generational deaf family in Queens, New York. At the hospital one day after he was born, Niall failed his first test, a hearing test, to the joy and the excitement of his parents. Niall shares stories both heartbreaking and humorous of what it means to navigate a world built for hearing people. From growing up in a rough and tumble childhood in Queens with his big, loving Italian-American family to where he is now, Niall has always been driven to explore beyond the boundaries given to him. A college math major and athlete at Gallaudet, a famed university for deaf in Washington, D.C., Niall was drawn as a young man to acting and dove headfirst into the reality show competitions, America's Next Top Model and Dancing with the Stars, ultimately winning both competitions.